Welcome to Creative Generations podcast. Today we have another episode in our series, The Art of Becoming, where we talk with the incredible Dwight Rhoden, former principal dancer with Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater and the co-founder and artistic director of Complexions Contemporary Ballet. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Instagram account. You can visit our website at creativegenerations-dance.com. And for more information on Complexions, visit complexionscontemporaryballet.org. Please enjoy Dwight Rhoden. Mr. Dwight Rhoden, welcome to the Creative Generations podcast. We're also here with Jamie Clifton today. You are such an icon in the world of dance. You are a former principal dancer with Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, co-founder of Complexions Contemporary Ballet, which just celebrated its 30th season. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
We're doing a series of episodes on this podcast where we talk to artistic directors, and we are not only trying to get insights into the role of artistic director, but also your outlook on the world of dance. But most importantly, we're trying to get a demystification of the audition process, the hiring process, especially for young dancers out there that are listening. Before we delve into all of that, I just want to ask you about where you started in dance and how that became your career, and then eventually how you founded your own company and became an artistic director.
So, I'm from Dayton, Ohio. So I grew up there, and oh yeah. So Dayton, I didn't really know anything about the formal the art form of dance, ballet, modern, any of it. I really didn't have any sense of it. What my biggest sort of influence was what we saw on television. And back then there were a lot of variety shows on with dance numbers and all of that. So I was always like sort of pinned to the TV looking at that stuff, not knowing, not really making the connection that these are like professionals who trained for years and so I used to just make up dances all the time myself with me and sometimes my sisters at home. And then, there was always like a dance at school at the end of the week or something. We used to call it sock hops and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I would get into the contest because I would have made up some crazy elaborate routine and compete. And well, one of the dancers who was always competing just brought me over to DCDC, Dayton Contemporary Dance Company, in my hometown, and said, you're really talented. Her name is Sherry Williams. She was also a very well-known dancer in the field. And she said, you've got talent, you should do this. And she literally walked me into the building of the school. I saw the art form in front of me, like and it was all women, and they were just all really good, well-trained. And for me as a young person, it was like, what is this? How are they doing what they're doing? And I was like, oh my, I have a lot of work to do. But honestly, I was hooked. Just like immediately, it's like almost like I found what it is I should be doing. And of course, my parents were like, what? Dancing? Ballet? No. I quit my little side job. I was in high school. I was 18. I was in my senior year of high school.
Oh, wow.
I was just turning 18. I was 17 actually and turning 18. And I don't even know like what happened. I don't even remember. I just know that I quit my job. I was working at Kroger's. And I just was enthralled with the discipline and the beauty and like the expression. I felt like, maybe as a young guy, I was like, oh, I can find my way to like express myself, because I was sort of battling. I had played instruments, not really, no discipline. I played the clarinet, the flute, the drums. It wasn't really hitting, but as soon as I saw dance and felt, and honestly, more importantly, felt dance and the music and just all of that, I was hooked.
I mean, I definitely relate to the part about, being able to express yourself, especially as a male in dance. A lot of times that's hard. And a lot of times in your training and coming up and trying to decide if it's something you want to do, that becomes a little bit of an internal battle. Did you struggle with that a little bit? Or do you think it
Well,
because you started later and you were more a formed adult?
yeah, you know what it was? I was so like, I saw immediately the work and the training and the way the body was responding. And I didn't know anything about technique. I had no idea that, you were closing fifth or, any
Yeah.
of that kind of stuff. I had no, like, zero, zero. But what I know that I was an expressive kid. I grew up a lot with my grandmother who lived one block away. And then eventually she moved in with us. So we always had like three generations in our household. And she
Mm.
was very creative. She was a pianist, my grandmother, classical, and also she played in church as well. And she always wanted me to play the piano. But I mean, what I'm saying is she was also like what do you call it? She was an elementary school teacher as well. So she was all about creativity and young people. And I would go to her classroom and she had decorated it in a way that was just like beyond. So anyway, my grandmother was a big influence on how I perceived the world. You could catch us outside in the back and she would be looking at a leaf, having her magnifying glass and showing me. And then, she was just really sort of a dreamy lady.
Yeah.
And she really influenced me in like my perspective. She was a very gentle, kind of like kind soul. And so, as you can tell, we were very, very close. And I think that she had a huge impact on how I see the world, in addition to my own mom as well. But my mother was a single mother, five children. She was
Mm.
busy. So
Yeah.
we were, she was working many jobs and we were all just, there were five of us and we were just there doing our thing, learning.
So how did you get from Dayton to Alvin Ailey? How did you make that jump?
Yeah. The second company I went to after DCDC was Le Ballet Jazz de Montreal.
Okay.
Um, and that was really where it was the first time I left my hometown, as a dancer. Um, but I had also lived with my dad, who also lived in Germany and Europe for the majority of his life. And
Mm.
so from 11 to 14, I was in Europe, sort of that. So I had some exposure. So I had a little bit of world exposure. But when I went to Le Ballet Jazz, it was like the first time, and I just auditioned. Back then you had to send your videos, those big videos, and the VHS, send your videos and also send your resumes. Everything was by mail. There was not really any email, or I didn't know about it if there was. I think email came later. And and I sent it to, I mean, like probably to play. I think I sent it to the Royal Ballet, like as if I was ready for that. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really have a big education. So because Dayton, there was very few dance performances that came in. So my exposure was what I could see in my, there in my
Mm.
hometown of Dayton. And so then from Le Ballet Jazz, I spent, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years there, 3 years actually. And we toured the world. I saw more things with Le Ballet Jazz probably than any company because they went to really obscure places as well as like big, big sort of cities. And I was there for a while. And then I started to think about Ailey again because I had already auditioned twice. And so then I had my third audition um, after I met Desmond, actually, Desmond Richardson, after a performance because they were in Canada.
Ah.
We went to an after party that was dancing and we danced all night and became really, really close, kept in touch. And he's like, the audition's coming, the audition's coming. You got to come back. I was like, well, they don't seem to like me. I've already done it twice, but I was like, my one friend said to me, well, if you don't try, you're going to always be like sitting there wondering, like, what if I would have gotten it, So to take
Yeah.
the opportunity, and I did. And of course, she was right, and I got the job. And I was very happy.
Oh, that's amazing. So you meet Desmond and you're in Ailey together. And then how do you eventually come to Complexions? I mean, how do you co-found a company together? How do you become directors of the company?
Well, it's crazy. Well, Desmond and I, and as many, some people I now think didn't know, but Desmond and I were a couple we were a couple for at least, I think it was 18 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
we were together for that amount of time. But in the beginning, we were so in love with the art form itself. We would dance at home a lot. So I always had that creative bug since making up those routines, I will call them, back in the day. As you make your way, I was always, even at Le Ballet Jazz, I would get my friends. I mean, even taking it back to DC, I had the nerve to walk up to the director and ask her, could I do a ballet? And I had been started dancing for maybe 3 months. And I said, well, I have this idea. Again, not knowing protocol, right? And she looked at me like, yeah, go back to ballet class and we'll talk in a couple years, maybe. And so I also did that at Le Ballet Jazz. And then once I was in ALA, I just could not stop. So creating things always was hand in hand with me training, dancing. So they all like moved down the road together.
Hmm.
I developed it together. So one was always here, is never not been here, which is the creative part. And Desmond was this, as we all know, this beautiful young dancer. He was the youngest they ever took in ALA. He was like 17 when he got in, and
Hmm.
he just was incredible. And I had the privilege of making things on his body and us collaborating along the way. We're trying to get these videos because it is our 30th anniversary season, and we were searching through videos trying to find us in the living room, making up phrases of movement and things like that. So we became really fast friends, and we had a really great career there at Ailey, and we felt it was done. He was moving on to Frankfurt Ballet with Billy Forsyth. And I
Hmm.
wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I knew that I was going to be in dance, and I knew I needed to choreograph because I had sort of my first big success with Ailey. I had gotten the opportunity. Judith Jamison gave me my first opportunity on a large stage in large platform, large company. And she really, that's how I broke into the field. So she kind of helped me launch my career as a choreographer. Because when you do a work in New York City and it gets all of that, and it's the Ailey company, mind you, it was quite big, and I was so appreciative of the opportunity. Like, number one, I took nothing for granted. I worked really hard, and I loved it. And
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Wow. I mean, 30 years of Complexions. It's such an iconic company. You've done so much in the world of dance, which we will talk about. I do want to get into a couple questions from our mentees, just so we get some out there. The first one is one that we've asked all the directors we've interviewed, and it's, what attributes or qualities do you look for in dancers that you are hiring? Could you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of all the above in terms of like the people who have been in my life and who have deeply influenced who and what I have become as a director and choreographer. Um, so Geraldine Blunden, who was the director at DCDC, I think foundationally she set me up. The
Hmm.
level of integrity, the work ethic, uh, you know, working really hard, looking deeply at things. And then there's Alvin Ailey, the humanity and expression in the work, the heart and soul of things. He understood that like nobody's business. Then there are influences for me like that I didn't work with, like George Balanchine, The Craft, um, and Billy Forsyth, the courage, the courageousness of being able to, buck the system, take ballet and turn it on its head a little bit. That was encouraging because I really responded to that idea of really like the creativity of taking movement and doing not necessarily doing the traditional always sticking to the traditional route. And that movement is movement, the most natural thing that we do. We move, you know. And so one of the things that I look for in dancers as well is a strong, clear instrument. And this doesn't always equate to necessarily classical ballet technique. It just means technique of some sort. Jamie knows how I feel about this part, which is I need the dancers to be clear, clear. And the way you can be clear, and it doesn't matter what style, because I have worked in many styles. I just did a musical over in London, and that was a whole nother lane for me. But I think the overarching quality that I look for in a dancer is an instrument that is available. And I think in today's day and age, you need to have many different types of training as a part of what you do, even if you're not focused on that. Even if you're going to be, say you're really training for classical ballet and that's what you want to do, and I love it, and that's absolutely fine. You should go take a Bollywood class. You should take a hip hop class. Perspective. Open yourself, keeping yourself wide open to whatever possibility, because, you know, we're in a world where fusion, things are not necessarily absolutes anymore. There's a lot of cross-pollination in movement, and you know what I mean? Like it's really cool what's happening, and dancers have to be ready for that. I also look for people who are generous with their movement, because so that it can come across the footlights, so it can come to us and it reaches the audience. So technique is important, but without the ability to connect, then you just have a great facility with nice lines and a great technique. But there's more. And one other thing that I love is the individuality. Like that is what I do, is I like people who are in front of me that I can actually build, because they actually build me too. As a choreographer, I grow because I don't have the best ideas always. I don't pretend to have the best idea when I walk in the room. I have some ideas. I will have some ideas, and probably too many. And then I have the dancer. So it's very important that the dancer is always working on the human being that they are as well. And I don't mean to sound cliche or anything, but it's very important that you are a person as well as an artist, because that's what you pull from.
Yeah.
You know, you need to live and love and lose, and you have to have all of those things. And when, you have to have all of those dynamics to be able to bring some depth into the work that you do, because otherwise you're just kind of regurgitating the step that the choreographer gave you. And that will be enough for the design and the composition, but it won't be enough for what? Performance, which is, there's a, you know what I mean? We are back and forth. Like, how can you do it without reaching people? So I do a lot with dancers on how to fulfill the movement and to reach and to be really in there. So it's hard to do that in an audition setting when you're seeing them for, not a long period of time, but it's revealing. I'm sure you guys have seen that too. Like, you watch dancers for a bit, and it's very revealing what you can see from them almost immediately. They're, auditioning for you.
Yeah, the way you've described what you look for in a dancer really opens up to attracting a really diverse kind of group of people to come together, which is how, I see Complexions. You're giving every height, every length of limb, every shade of skin, every development of musculature. There are so many different bodies, and there's this really amazing unified feeling. And it's really, really beautiful. And I was just wondering if there's anything specific, any qualities or strengths that you think maybe the dancers from underrepresented backgrounds, might need those tips or if there's anything that you can share with them from your experience or the experience of the dancers you've been working with for the last 30 years and beyond. Like, is there anything really, you know, helpful in that specific space?
I mean, I think that, you know, with diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is such a big topic these days. For me, it's just been a way that I operate. It's not something that I try to do. It's just as something that I prefer. I prefer I prefer to work with a diverse group of people. I don't always like to just be with the people that know what I know or come from the same background that I do or might be the same race or whatever. I think that that is just limiting, and it is not indicative of the world we live in. And so to me, that's very sort of not really practical and or attractive to me. So I do love the fact that these people are from all these different backgrounds. And the great thing about that is we get to learn, we get to celebrate. If I'm next to someone who grew up in South America, or say they're Venezuelan or something, I don't know, but that are different from me, I get to learn about how they approach life and what their experiences are. And it's a win-win for all. And that's how I look at it. And when you see my company or the Desmond and I's company, we celebrate the difference. So this is a terrible thing to say, and maybe I shouldn't say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's like we sometimes say this, and this is with the greatest amount of love and reverence, is that we say our company is a band of misfits. Now, we don't mean that in a derogatory way. We mean that in the most loving, beautiful, like, look at this treasure trove of what you just said, Jamie, which is body types, you know, all of the differences that you mentioned. So that was a long way to say that, to answer your question about like what are some of the qualities that's where we are, right, Jamie?
Yeah.
Or that I'm looking for in a dancer. I want to say a passion, and you can see that right away in the movement or not, you know, the passion. There's also something to be said for a confidence in who they are. So even though, you know, an audition setting is always nerve-wracking, you know, for the dancers, it's nerve-wracking. There's no way about it. You're being looked at, you're being judged. But I think that a certain sort of confidence and an honesty, and that comes with, it's not always possible for young people to get there with these things that I'm naming in a list right now. To be confident, you ask, you know, a young person to be confident, they're trying to get their first job. It's not easy. But I think that dancers have to audition more and more and more, and there's a skill. And I know that I'm sort of going into another area, but I'm just saying there's a skill to auditioning, and you have to do it. There's no substitute for repetition. You have to do it. You need mileage. You're going to find your way. You're going to get more comfortable. You're going to know how to present yourself. So there's that. And then I think that also dancers want to be, I want to say, in the audition setting itself, they need to be a lot more open. They almost want to appear as though they are interested. Do not go to the back of the room. Bring yourself to front. We see that. The people in the front see, oh, she's hiding in the back over there. Maybe she's a little uncomfortable, or he's, you know, so. And that speaks to, oh, well, why don't they want to be seen right now? They're in an audition setting. I think those are a few of the things.
Yeah, kind of asking a little bit more, maybe for some help for these young people about that last part, about being seen in the audition. So I think a lot of young dancers are trying to toe the line between being, especially in a company class setting, let's say, being respectful of the company that's there. And I think maybe that's why a lot of them pull back, and it's not necessarily because they're afraid, although sometimes it can be. How would you encourage young dancers to kind of like toe that line of respect, but also eagerness?
I think it's a hard, it's a hard one. I think that like in that setting that you mentioned, Jamie, like that's a tough one. Like when you're in a company class and you're that person being seen and you want to be respectful. Um, I still say, allow the company, said company, people to do as they will, but you still find a place a little bit more towards the front of the room. I really think that, with respect, fine, because you are auditioning and you do need to be seen. So I think that you should, push yourself up into the front of the room. I don't mean in any kind of derogatory way, of course, but you don't want to hover in the back, in my opinion. I think you want to bring yourself forward to be seen. And then, the one of the audition things that I always say is that bring your full self as best you can to the audition space. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be nervous, accept that you are nervous, kind of like put that in a frame for yourself and say, I'm a little nervous. People appreciate the honesty of that sometimes. They'll say you miss a step or you're off the count, but never stop, never drop out. If you're nervous and you forget the combination or you're not clear or you fall off balance or whatever, push through. That means a lot. And you know why? Because we look at that. Because you have to recover. Dance is the art of recovery. You have to recover. So if you're on stage, nothing happens perfectly every time. So practice now how you would still recover and not let everything fall apart because you maybe missed a step or forgot something.
Yeah. We've talked to a couple different directors and everybody has a kind of a different audition process. And so I was curious, could you explain or talk through your company's audition process, whether it's taking a class, then doing rep, then doing partnering, then, what does a typical audition for Complexions look like?
So when we do our annual audition, it starts with the ballet class and ballet bar, and we have done it many ways. And I have found that at first we were like, oh, we don't need to do a bar. It's like, because, time in New York City, time and space and all of that, it's always, you're trying to get it all in a short period of time. But I have found that we need long periods of time and I need more than one day. And that sounds like a lot, but it's really needed. So we start with the ballet class, and we won't, it'll be abbreviated, truncated, but we'll get them nice and warm. But I need to see certain things in the class. Like I need to see their ability for clarity of line and form and shape. For the dancers that dance on point, we need to see that they actually are, trained and can achieve the point work that is needed to be in the company. So we always make sure that's there. We definitely do partnering. So that's a real big thing right now that I would encourage dancers to work on and to get as much experience in that as they can. The partnering skill, I would say right now and across the board, we need more. We need more skill there, particularly the partnering on point, because that's a whole nother, it's just so different.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just so,
do you mind if I
remember
add something for you about partnering on point is men or partners that are partnering the person on point need to have a great sense of counterbalance and controlling off the leg behavior and movement. So not just on the leg, not just on the leg.
Well, yeah. And you know what, Jamie, and I'll just say this to you right now, is that you were so good at that part. Number one, being courageous and experimenting with it, but you weren't afraid to you were a great person to have in a process, period. Because I remember that about you, is that the way you were just like game for whatever, wherever we were going to go. And I think that exploration, but you know what, that exploration came because you also were solid technically, solid training, solid. So that now you had, and this is what I say to young dancers now, is that's why I say just it's a work that you will not stop doing. When I retired from the stage, I was still working on things, still working on things. So the work never really stops, and that shouldn't feel, discouraging in any way. It's part of the craft. It's just you're always looking for more. And I think that that's such a big thing. So partnering is so important right now, and it also to me. And then I also allow the dancers to improv. So we'll have a session of improv, a directed improv. Now, not just to go out and do whatever, but I'll give them a scenario, a quality of movement, maybe some parameters. But I also want to see them. This is a chance for them. If all of the phrase work that they've learned through the audition wasn't enough, sometimes, believe it or not, the improv could just turn the page in a different direction. So maybe they weren't as strong as you wanted them technically, but there was this incredible individuality, this voice that came out through their improvisation. For me as a creative, I'm just looking like, oh, let me shape that. Let me shape that. Let's take that beauty that they have in that quality. And that's why I say to young dancers, it's so important that you bring your full self. It's hard to do that when you're young, I know. But no, there's a lot of them out there that really go for it. I'm very encouraged by the generation of dancers that are out there right now. They are killer, some of them, in a great way. Like, you know what I mean? They are really great and open. There's some, I find that there's some boxes unchecked or some areas of their training and stuff that still need zipping up. But I do like the kind of spirit and energy of this generation of dancers that's happening now. They are really less afraid, and they're really going for it. That's a generalization, I know, but that's what I'm feeling from them.
Yeah. I just going back to a point that you made earlier about, you're always going to be working on things. You're always going to have stuff to improve upon. And, I think with this program and just the way that we all think, I think that's so important to reiterate to young people that, you have to make the work the fun part, because you're always going to be working on something.
And dance is not easy.
Yeah, it's never easy. We have a couple more audition questions. And then I do want to go back to talking about how dancers have evolved and the next generation and all that. But this is kind of a two-parter. Do you prefer dancers to audition in person, if possible, as opposed to a video submission? And then second to that, if they are submitting a video with their resume, with their cover letter and all that stuff, is there a particular order that you like to see in the video? Are there certain steps you like to see, certain styles? I mean, I think we kind of touched on that earlier, but what is your feeling, your preferences around a video submission?
So in person is always the way to go. For me and for Desmond, we want to see the person. We start usually with a video submission because we have our academy, the Complexions Academy. We have so many students, and there are a lot of young people, thankfully, we're very grateful for this, that really respond to this company and want to be a part of it and train. And we have a whole technique, but we will kind of have to, because there are so many dancers, what we try to do is ask them to submit a video. And from there, we'll do a vetting process starting there. And then we will call in the ones that we want to see. And yeah, it has to be in person at the end of the day. And because, after all that I just spoke about that we do in the audition, I also sit down and talk to them. I need to know that they can work in the environment with the rest of, it's a very intimate environment. We have 15 dancers. It's not like a company of 45 or 60 or 80 dancers. It's a very small group. You work really hard. So I need to know that, number one, they're game to, be on stage every night for every performance, pretty much probably in all the acts. You don't have a night off. Complexions is, you have to, you dance all night. And I also want to know who they are, their personality, and if they're, you get to know someone, you get to feel them out. We've learned by doing this for 30 years that is a necessary part of what we do, is talking to the artist. And, there's sometimes they're afraid to talk to you, after the audition process. So you have to like try to disarm them and say, hey, no, we're talking, and also usually if I'm talking to you, I'm real interested.
Yeah.
I'm real, you know what I mean? So we're at a place where I want to know you more, and you're about to get a job.
So being that you're such a tight, small group of dancers, kind of hearkening back to your experience with Ailey, how there were not young dancers. Desmond was an anomaly at the time, being 17. Mm-hmm. How do you approach the kind of experience that you are looking for, or the kind of dancer you're trying to hire in terms of, their readiness to be on stage doing your work today? Do you have training ground space in the company, or is that something else?
We have a training program, and we also have a apprentice program. And I will say almost in the last 3 to 4 years, almost every apprentice has eventually gotten a contract. In fact, one just started last Monday, an apprentice who had been an apprentice, I think, for maybe 2 seasons. And then, after 2 seasons, you kind of say, now it's probably time to move on if you don't get a contract. And so we took them in. So a lot of times there is a pipeline to these organizations, and I encourage dancers to pay attention to that part. Put yourself in front of the people that you want to see them. And sometimes it's not an audition, it's a workshop, taking class, is being in the space and being seen. Because, a lot of times little incredible discoveries happen from you just taking a class. Someone sees you and they say, I want to know more about her or him, I want to know a little bit more, So you kind of key in a little bit more to that. But, I have taken dancers in the company that were not like, okay, they're just 100% ready right now to do everything I need them to do, because the potential is there. And when I see potential, it's hard for me because I'm very much a big educating kind of a person, that I really always think that, I want to do so. So, and I get my hands slapped by some of my team here. They're like, but Dwight, we have a 6-city tour. We don't have time. We only have 2 weeks of rehearsal, So a lot of times I will take dancers that still need to continue to be developed and grown. And pretty much the company I have right now I have, for the most part, been involved in their growth and training up to the professional level. And that I love. But, there's a the other thing, dancers need to be quick. I didn't say that earlier. Look at the world we live in. They have to be quick. There's less and less time for creative processes. So just having a very, very agile mind and being able to have a lot of different choreography in your mind and being quick in, getting it and then holding on to it and growing it as well. So there's a lot. That's why the dancers are so smart. They're so smart. We all know that,
but based on what we talked about so far, I think I know the answer to this, but how important to you is a dancer's ability to adapt to any style and the culture of the company? And then what advice would you give a dancer that might be transitioning to a new company or their first company, whether it's, adapting to the culture or going from a small company to a big company or big company to small company? What are your thoughts on that?
I think you really have to go in like an open book. You have to stay open when you come into those types of environments where you're the new kid on the block and perhaps there's a company culture. We definitely look for dancers who are, who are people people who who can be with a group of, this is, it's not a solo show. You have to be involved in a company. So there's an ensemble, there's a collaborative idea. We really try to set a culture within the company. Dancers need to be able to slowly fit into that. And I would give them advice as, walk in ready and open. And most times the way that dance happens, you'll be, gathered up into the company before you know it, you'll be right there. And the dancers will bring you in. And the work does that too. Dancing itself, the physicality of dancing itself next to each other, the rhythm, the how you move together, there's a joy to that too. There's an inherent joy to moving next to someone.
We touched on it a little bit before, but I'm curious, being the director of Complexions for 30 years and being around so much incredible dance around the world, really. How have your expectations of dancers changed over the course of your career, of your tenureship as artistic director? And what advice do you have for the next generation? Where do you see the next generation going? What's your outlook on the next generation?
So my outlook on the next generation is a favorable one. Like I said earlier, I'm actually very encouraged, and that's why I keep myself with young people, because I love to be in the academy. I need to see where they are, what they're doing, how they're moving, what they're concerned about. And also I like to be a part of influencing that in their educating, in their training years. That's the time, to really get in there and get involved. One thing that I find that you have to encourage these days is for the dancers, everything is quick. So digging deeper. There are more layers to movement that you might receive that a lot of times young people are like, I have the combination, they're able to do it. They whipped out a great turn and they think they're done. And I'm like, that was really great. So now what? There has to be more depth and exploration. The movement itself, listen to your directors, listen to your choreographers. If they give you an image, try to hear the directives that you're given and apply them as you can, but try not to give back just movement that is necessarily, just the movement itself, and think that that's enough. So, and they're all capable. This generation is super capable. Sometimes they have to be more encouraged to go there because they're used to it's TikTok and Instagram. So we're used to producing it right away, putting it online, and we're done. But in live performance, you have to sustain. You have to sustain a moment. You have to keep the audience with you through the whole dance. So it's not enough just to, do the steps accurately. So I love that part because when you encourage that, you get results most times. And even if you can't get it that day, as long as the dancer continues to think about it and, maybe later in the week, it starts to sort of peek through a bit. And that's exciting. That's very exciting to see young dancers actually moving, you know what I mean? Like taking a step in the direction. I love seeing the development of that. So dancers have to really make sure that there's so many things coming at them. Steps, music, counts, all of that. I think dancers need to stay grounded as best they can, not make that be chaotic. Understand that that's just part of what we do. I'm going to have some difficult counts today. This music is a little weird, maybe. And I've got to be on, I want to deliver the vision for the choreographer. And I think that, the one thing I even miss as an artist is I always liked meeting the mark to the choreographer because it's not just about making them happy, but it's like bringing their dream, their vision to life. And if I can be a part of that, that's it. So now I'm on the other side all the time, and I want, you want the vision to be realized. And dancers can realize that they're not the only ones, but that there's a whole room full of people that are trying to make this thing happen. And they're a vital part of it, of course. But there are, you know what I mean? I hope I'm answering your questions, because I end up going all over the place, but
No.
We're enjoying the journey with you. It's nice.
I think, we also touched on this a little bit earlier, but you said yourself that you're an educator and you're someone that, mentors or likes to mentor young dancers. And that's perfect for this program, Creative Generations. That's what we're all about. And I guess I was wondering, how do you see mentorship evolving to ensure that young dancers, especially those that come from diverse backgrounds, feel empowered to reach their full potential? And can you speak a little bit about the importance of mentorship in dance?
I didn't know that it was as important as it is until I really started to do my own thing, like in terms of being a choreographer, starting a company. And I realized that young people need the support. People trying to get where they are need the support. And now, because of the world we live in, they need, there's also the mental health part of that, where they also need that kind of, you need to be able to relate to them. And that's a different thing. So I don't stay up on my high horse as a director. And, I try to be look them straight in, like we're at eye level, like we're like coming at this together. But, there's somebody who's sort of running the room or directing the rehearsal or whatever. And what I try to do with dancers is really empower them to understand that they are a vital part of what we're doing, and that I'm here to support. I tell my dancers sometimes, hey guys, I'm not letting you go out there and look crazy. I said, think of me as your manager. I'm protecting you. So this entire section over here is not going so well. We got to like drill down on this and get it a little tighter and blah, blah, blah. But it's because I care about, also, they have a brand. They have a brand. And especially in the world we live in, you can't underestimate the importance of your profile as an artist as well. That has to do with your reputation, how you work. People, it's such a small dance world. Everybody knows everybody. And, you must leave your impression that you leave in the room, the imprint, needs to be a positive one. So I definitely think that dancers are really equipped right now to really win in that space of auditioning and being seen. But that doesn't come without, I think there's a village around them somewhere. Maybe it's at their home school, possibly their parents or siblings, their dance teachers. But it's really necessary part of it. And I enjoy it because, again, I love to see the progress. And sometimes it's slower than you might even want, but you do see them stepping into that space. And the desire alone and the, and the effort to get there, that goes a really long way. There are times that I would be more interested in a dancer who is less developed, but has the passion, as opposed to a dancer who is, really well trained, looking great with all that, but doesn't have the passion, I don't even know how to say it. Passion is the best word I can think of, but there's probably a better word. You know what I mean? Doesn't have that energy to do.
Yeah. That next emotion that you can't quite describe.
Well, yeah, and you really want to come into the audition and you want to take whatever they give you and make it soar.
Yeah.
Like you really want the performance element of it to really be beautiful and go. You want to go for it. It doesn't need to be perfect. Perfection is overrated. Yeah. So I said all that about training, but it's not about being perfect. Those are mechanisms to make your dancing efficient, impactful, dynamic, layered. Those are what those tools are for. But you got to bring a piece of yourself to it as well. And that is, really going for putting the energy in. Understand that there's a director, a rehearsal director. There will be people who will help tidy it up or give you feedback so that it can be more here or more there, So there's, there are going to be people. Again, we're going back to the support. The support is there, or it should be there. So, yeah.
I would like to compliment you on your relentlessness with believing in dancers and pulling things out of them that they didn't know they had. And you are always asking for more, always pushing for more. And you don't write anybody off because they had a bad day or they haven't figured it out yet. Like I saw that piece after piece, year after year since 2003, that you're the ultimate consistent mentor, and you aren't just at the front of the room barking at people. You are really encouraging them and pushing in a beautiful way. We always felt like at the end of a project, wow, we really did something. We got somewhere. And that was a really incredible experience.
Wow, thank you, Jamie. I know that it's so important to me. The process is very important. And dancers need to know that yes, we want to get to the show. We want to get to the performance for sure. That's the amazing part too. But I have to say, I really do love the process because that's where all the magic happens. And then, I have to, Jamie, you've been with me before where it's like, okay, stop. We've got to cap this off and say we've got a ballet here. Because, I want to just keep going and explore the possibilities. And meanwhile, my dancers are like, whoa, and
We're like, but we open in 30 minutes, so we got to have a finish. How do we end this ballet? Yeah.
It happens. It has happened. That's for sure. And that's okay. A lot of times you are, you're just, I feel like dancers are they're down for whatever, but obviously not 30 minutes before, but I just mean you really go with the choreographer. And the other thing is trust is really important to me. Trusting me, just trusting the direction. You may not understand what I'm going for or the end all. You might think it's, you could have an opinion one way or the other, but to really, once you sign up for something, I think you should, once you're there, you should trust the direction until you can't anymore. And then you should not, you should go somewhere else or go to a different director. But I think trust is really, really paramount in that, because I need to know you trust me, because I'm going to ask you, as you said, Jamie, to do things that you might not think you can do. And, be game for trying almost anything safely. And that makes sense. Safely, I'll say that.
I think it's so important that you talked about the process, because I think a lot of times we do have our eye on the prize and we're just thinking about the performance. And, unless you're in a Broadway show where you're doing 8 shows a week, the majority of your time is going to be spent in the studio, rehearsing, collaborating, working things out. So it's so important to remember that. Along those same lines, what steps do you take to help dancers with the longevity of their career? And what advice would you give a dancer who would like to have a sustained career in this field? And then a second part to that, do you have any advice for dancers that are transitioning out of their performance career?
So longevity is really an important part of being a dancer, and that is if you want to take it for longer and being able to stay in the game for a little bit longer than, say you get your first company and you're done. You're not necessarily done. You want to do more sometimes. There's a journey to a dancer's, to an artist as they continue to do the work that they do around the world and on the stage. But I also think that the dancers, you have to continue to take care of your body. Longevity is also being curious, continuing to dig deeper in your work. Physically, I always say, continue to train or take class, keep your body where you want it. But I also encourage dancers to, like I said earlier, a little bit like look outside of just what you do from 10 to 6 every day or 9 to 5, whatever your hours are in your company, but what else? What else is out there? What are you curious about? Did you always want to play a musical instrument? Start that. Do you want to learn how to sing? Start that. Do you want to garden? Are you into that? Whatever it is, but having a life as a person and living is paramount to bringing back beautiful things to the art form. And that was actually instilled in me through Mr. Ailey, through Alvin, because the first thing we would do when we came back from summer break, he would sit us all down on the floor and want to know what we all did on summer break. Some people would say, oh, I did a play down in the East Village. Oh, I, did a commercial. Oh, I got a video. It was during the MTV days, back then. And then there's the transition, transitioning, that was part of the question too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we are doing something really fun at Complexions. Like we've already started. We have two dancers who are senior dancers. One been in the company over 10 years. We have appointed these two dancers as senior artistic associates. So they're in the direct line of leadership from Desmond and I, because we're also thinking about the future as well. There has to be, what happens next? What's the next chapter? We're not going anywhere right now. We're still here, but we are training them, and they are like doing, there's going to be a stop on tour. I won't say the city, but there's going to be a stop on tour where for the very first time ever, there won't be a director in the theater with the company and these artistic associates. And there's also a ballet master as well. So they will be fine. But what we're doing now is really training them on what it is. They're involved in the programming, casting. They're looking at new choreographers, the people we want to bring in. They're looking at the overarching budget. So there's a sense of a continuation from us to them into the dancer. So we're just connecting it all. And so transitions like that, like we also have one dancer in the company who's very interested in arts funding and fundraising. So they're starting to do that on the side. Of course, dancing still being, primary, but having another interest there. So that will prepare them for maybe next steps when they do decide to stop dancing. They will have already sort of, and maybe they'll go into something completely different, It's always a hard transition. It really is. I mean, I look at someone like Desmond who transitioned out of performing. He performed for a very, very long time before he sort of stopped. He could still even do it now, but he has decided to really focus on directing. He is an amazing coach, just really incredible coach, and a great teacher, ballet teacher. But one of the things with Des is that he did it very elegantly, and he took his time. So he didn't stop immediately. He kind of like wheedled down, slowly. And then finally it was like, I'm good. And so I look at that, and I've always worked with mature dancers too, dancers who are, up there in age, like even someone like Carmen de Lavalade, who, oh my gosh, I started creating for her and she was already, approaching 70 and in her 60s. She's now in her 90s. And that was the most incredible experience. Also, Gus Solomons Jr., who passed away not too long ago, another mature artist was just Sarita Allen, who comes from the Elliott company, who I work with for years, a mature artist built. So I always have, so that diversity that we talked about earlier, also with age, like I love having a more mature dancer in the room with some of the more younger dancers. It's a win-win for even for the mature, because they get inspired, by the youth of it all. And the young people get really inspired by the ability to just do what they do. The experience just speaks for itself. And
Yeah.
very encouraging for young dancers, I think.
So we've talked a lot about, young dancers and advice for young dancers, and kind of owning yourself, owning your movement, your qualities, also an openness and a collaboration with those around you. Is there any other advice that you have for young dancers out there that are trying to enter the professional world? Anything, big advice, small advice, anything to kind of help those out there that are looking to get a job?
Be okay with no.
Mm.
Get used to hearing. When I say get used to, I don't mean to say that you're going to always hear no. I just mean that it's part of that. It's part of what we do. You're going to hear no, but to understand that no doesn't mean, it means no right now, or it means no for this project. It doesn't mean no for you as an artist. You are worthy, valid, and capable. You have to find the right fit. So continue your journey. And if you heard no, and this is really you're not satisfied with that no, good. I'm glad to hear it. Go back. Figure out, also get feedback. Dancers ask me for feedback after auditions. And at first I was like, I never asked for feedback when I was younger, but again, I didn't know a lot. But dancers today, they're very, forward. And I'll give feedback and figure out what was missing, or you could just not be right for a specific thing, and understand that that is not a reflection on your beauty or your readiness or your talent. None of that. No is just no. And it's hard to hear. I get that. It is really hard to hear sometimes, especially when you want it, when you really want it. As I think that if I had heard no in my third audition with Elliott, it would have, crushed me a bit, but I'm sure I would have recovered. But dancers need to be comfortable hearing that and understanding that that is only for this moment. You will go on, and you might feel bad for a few minutes, or a day or two or whatever, but, dust yourself off, get back up, because that is not a reflection of you and what you have to offer. It just possibly wasn't the right fit. And again, we're in a visual art form. Maybe you weren't the right height. Maybe they had to have a very, a particular person that they needed for a specific part that was partnering a specific person that needed to be a specific size. You don't know all the parameters. So it shouldn't be so personal, although it is. You need to know that they're probably extenuating. There are other factors that you have no idea about that brought them to that. Or you might not be right for the part. Or, I hate to say this, maybe you're not ready and you need to, work a little bit more on whatever the feedback you might have received. But I think that, dancers walking into into an audition process, really, I go back to bring your full self, come ready, come warm. Also, visually what you wear, bring the best, that accentuates the best qualities that you have as a dancer. And we look at that. We look at how tidy you are or how not tidy you are, or, don't come in there a mess. Come in there looking great and ready, basically ready and available.
Yeah, I mean, you've given so much insight and just really great advice today. Yeah, thank you so
Well,
much.
well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I love dancers, and they, we're getting there. We're not there, but I want them to be as appreciated as they are. Some of the most hardworking athletes out there, and I want them to be appreciated for the amount of work that it takes to do what we do on the stage. It is because it goes beyond just taking class every day and going to rehearsal. There's cross training. There's all the things that you have to do to stay competitive in this business and to be ready and to be able to move from project to project. And then there's the physical maintenance of keeping your body healthy too. So there's so
Mm.
many things that dancers have to do. And I just, that's why I support dancers. That's why I'm always trying my best to, guide, and I enjoy it because I didn't have a lot of guidance as a young dancer. I didn't really know. I just kind of was going where I went. I figured it out. I did have some good friends that helped me, but I didn't have the kind of mentorship that I think young dancers need. And particularly in this complicated world, they really need it,
Mm.
that support.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
I
you for
mean,
being so generous with your dancers and with, all of the questions that we've had for you today to share.
I think that last thing you said is, what this program is all about, Creative Generations. I mean, just trying to offer that support to people out there, young dancers that might not know that it's there. So yeah, thank you for your work and your continued mentorship and just the beautiful artistry that you bring to the dance world. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. I have to say, when I'm doing like auditions, I end up teaching in the audition, and they're like, Dwight, we have to make a cut. Like there are like 150 dancers in the room, so we have to like make a cut. And I just enjoy teaching them. It's hard because I know where they are, and I'm
Yeah.
looking at them, and I see some stress, I see some anxiousness, and I don't know, I empathize with that. I get it. I get
Yeah.
it.
So thank you
No.
for that and for being so generous and open. And you've always been so nurturing and so loving because, yeah, there
Yeah.
was all that trust. I practice what you preach. Everything you said today is who you are and how you
Mhm.
operate. And I really, really appreciate that. I feel very fortunate to have been in your care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Art of Becoming. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and Instagram account. Visit our website at creativegenerations-dance.com. And for more information on Complexions, please visit complexionscontemporaryballet.org.
What is Creative Generations? What makes it so unique, so needed? And what do we do? An organization created by dancers, we are a team of professional dancers and top wellness experts in dance nutrition and mind-body health who are fully dedicated to helping you thrive. Join Creative Generations and immediately have your own team of mentors and experts supporting you.
And I feel like there's a void in the dance world that no one wants to talk about, and this program is that, if that makes sense. Even if you're perfectly fine, there's still like podcasts you can listen to that you can experience breath work. Like there's always something to work on, even if you are in a good spot.